here again is Kirby Anderson.
If you'd like to join our conversation, 1-800-351-1212. We'll get to some of those calls in just a minute, but I mentioned that we have a take action item on our website. If you received an email from me, I point out that just a few days, the House of Representatives is scheduled to vote on the Equality Act, and I say, as usual, they've given the legislation a nice-sounding name. This is no different than the old Employment Non-Discrimination Act, or ENDA, but it is much more aggressive. I'm going to have Kelly talk about that in just a minute. But you might say, well, yes, it'll probably pass the House and it'll go nowhere. Well, I'm not so sure now. This is why we wanted to get your attention. It most likely will pass the House of Representatives, which is why you need to at least tell your representative how you stand on that. Then it goes to the Senate. And you might say, well, it'll die there. Maybe, but the U.S. Chamber of Commerce recently announced its support for the Equality Act. There is at least some rumors that at least one or two Republicans, in addition to all the Democrats, might vote for it, including Susan Collins of Maine. So, Penna, this is more likely than people might have imagined. So tell us why we should not be a little bit more concerned about this issue of the Equality Act.
Well, we should be concerned. It passed the House Judiciary Committee this week. It could be as soon as next week it goes before the full House. As you said, it has a very nice sounding name, Equality. And it's another attempt to really fool around with the Civil Rights Act of 1964. It would prohibit discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation, and this is what differentiates it from ENDA, also gender identity. So, it affects employers. That's probably the biggest concern when you look at it. It would just elevate transgender rights over and above the religious liberty rights of an employer. Just think about this one case going to the Supreme Court of the funeral home, where an employee is switching over from male to female or female to male, I forget which it is. And so then you have this funeral owner who doesn't want that before the public. And, maybe some longtime customers are going to see the change, and maybe the person is obviously not really of the new gender just by looking at them and talking to them. So this, you don't want that in that particular business. So people should have rights with regard to these things, and it really wipes out some of those rights. Some of the other things that it would do, it would elevate transgender theory and gender-affirming care to a civil right. So there, you're affecting the psychological community, all the conversion therapy, any attempt to help somebody to deal with those feelings that they might be a different gender would be outlawed. You couldn't do it. What about the medical community, who now in many cases, they are beginning to force each other and kind of peer pressure each other into doing hormone and surgical gender reassignment? It would begin to force this issue even more. So that's the medical professional area. So public schools would be affected. Curriculum would change to teach that it's not biological reality that really matters. It's not science that matters. We're going to talk about science in a few minutes, but it's that gender is more subjective. And then parents' rights. There's so many situations in which parents disagree with some of these things that their kids are being medically exposed to or educationally exposed to, undermining the rights of women, for instance, to have their privacy in the bathrooms or locker rooms. Now, we're hearing all about women's sports teams, and transgender women are coming in and they're really men, but they're competing with women. It would advance that agenda. So there's just so many areas that it would cover. It's pretty much one of those all-encompassing efforts. It's amazing to me that it's gone this far, but it has. And so, it's just part of the radical nature of the left right now. And the Democrat Party is kind of the vehicle they're using in this legislation. So it has to be stopped. We're giving you a really easy way to do it by going to pointofview.net and going to that Take Action section.
Yeah, it's, there fairness for all legislation, which is one sort of middle of the road type thing to try to see if they can compromise between LGBT and religious freedom. This is not that. This is, as radical as really you can get, saying LGBT wins, religion loses at all times. And so it literally has the rights of transgender, of sexual orientation, or whatever, saying that trumps religious freedom in every situation, whether you're running your business, whether your kids are at school, you name the situation. It also means that, as Penna mentioned, that, locker rooms, showers, all that, there's no protection. I mean, we had a case just this last year with a Christian battered women's shelter where a man showed up and wanted to sleep there, but he said he was transgender and he was really a woman. Well, these battered women don't want a man in there, and so they, said you can't. He was also drunk. He said, no, you can't do that. And the next thing they knew, the city of Anchorage had a discrimination ordinance. Okay, that makes that now national.
Right.
Okay, everywhere. So this would affect ministries. It would affect your business. It would affect your children. But basically what it does is it just totally obliterates any ability of people to have religious freedom. This always wins. So whatever transgender issue or sexual orientation issue, it doesn't matter. We don't do a balancing test. We don't look at the scenario, which is what you normally do with a religious freedom case. You say, well, is there a compelling interest here that necessitates us burdening this person's religion? You don't do any balancing. It's just LGBT wins, Christians lose. And
that's
so,
supposed to be equality.
Yeah. And so it's a good one for people to weigh in on, because it's so extreme, and there's no attempt. I think what they're doing is, this is make the LGBT base happy, knowing that this is not going to pass, and therefore most people won't see the effects of it. But it's dangerous, and it's probably going to get through the House, and then we're already hearing it might get some Republican votes in the Senate, and if it does, if they get to 60, then they pass it and send it to the president. So now is the time for people to call and weigh in with your congressman, with your senator, and it's really easy to do at point of view. And
I think one of the dangers is when legislators look at this, the name, because it has so much to it that, I don't think the average person knows what, or could explain or whatever. And so they just see that Equality Act. And so there's going to be some legislators who are going to vote for it based on that. And that's why, even though we're hopeful that it could not pass the Senate, it could in the environment we're in, because it's so worthy of critique, I guess is the best way to describe it. If you do anything to violate "quote unquote" equality now in this atmosphere, you are, you're in trouble with a lot of people. So that's the problem. And they find names. The left finds names that helps them draw support simply because of the name. And so that's a possibility.
And I think that name is a big issue, because some people have said that the best way to have won the same-sex marriage argument is just to have the bumper sticker that just had the equal sign. Mm-hmm. And I mean, to win a base and to win an argument and to actually change the whole definition of marriage just with a bumper sticker that has an equal sign. And this one, of course, is the Equality Act. Well, who would be against equality? You have to almost sound like you're a horrible person, but the articles that we have posted, matter of fact, my commentaries that we have put up, and even my email that just went out a couple hours ago, remind you that it would override the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. It, as we even point out there, would take a wrecking ball to this issue of religious liberty. And I think Kelly would agree with that. And that's not hyperbole. You have to address this every single day. So we just wanted to alert you to the opportunity. I also know that whenever we talk about this, some of you say, well, I live in New York, I live in California, I know my legislator, I know my representative is going to vote for this. Okay, at least you should express your opinion about that.
Especially when it's so easy.
Yes, and that's another point we might make. I've had people tell me over the years that, candidly, sometimes when you say call your member of Congress, I'll admit, I never did it, they'd say. But you've made it so easy because all you have to do is go to the website here. And as long as you know your name and address, you're good. Because even if you don't know your representative, it will surface that. And then there's a suggested comment, and you can modify that any way you want and send it off. So we're giving you a very simple way to at least contact your member of the House about this issue. And if it does pass the House, we'll give you that opportunity with your 2 senators.